Welcome again to Inlandia Literary Journeys. I'm John Bender, Metro Editor of the Press Enterprise. I'm here with Orlando Ramirez, Editor of La Prensa, Katie Porter, Executive Director of the Inlandia Institute, and author Dwight Yates. Welcome, Dwight.
Thank you, John.
And I understand this week you're going to be performing at Riverside's Art Walk.
So I'm told.
Yes.
And the title of the performance is Unforced Confessions.
That's right.
It's a dialogue with two other folks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why not forced confessions?
Well, not forced confession. Yeah, I think the government does that,
Okay.
so I thought I would do something a little different.
So how does yours differ?
Well, it's amazing, I think, how sometimes people just tell you things that maybe you didn't ask for, and this probably falls in that category. But it's a bit of a new genre for me, if it indeed it is a genre. What happened was, I'm always struggling to write short fiction. And a few years ago, I was really struggling, and I thought, well, I've got to try some new technique. So I thought if I got a couple people just talking on the page, surely they would start to argue, or they would discover something worth talking about, and that would balloon into a story. So I gave it a try, just doing dialogue back and forth. But after 2 or 3 pages, they seemed to have talked it out and resolved the issue. So I thought, well, try again. And try again. After about 3 of these, I realized that I seemed to be writing sketches or vignettes. They weren't turning into stories, they were just closing, sort of it. They seemed somewhat complete. So that seemed to be working for a while, and I thought I'll explore this. Wrote a couple dozen of them, maybe a few more, threw a bunch away. Ended up keeping quite a few. So assembled, they seem to be a little too much of the same thing, one dialogue after the other. So I decided then to intersperse these with monologues, thinking that monologues and dialogues would go together. So now I have, I think it's 23 dialogues, 9 or 10 monologues. And the monologues sort of divide them somewhat thematically. And now I have to find a publisher for it.
Yeah.
But in the past, I presented the monologues because, you know, there's so much like first-person stories. And that's been easy enough for me to do. But it's a little awkward for me to present the dialogues, especially when it's between a man and a woman.
By
You've got
yourself.
some help.
So I've got some help. I've exploited some young friends. And,
Tell us their names.
a young man by the name of Erin Ingoldsby-Stevenson, and a young woman whose name is Mariya Shpungina. And last spring, they were in London, studying at the London School of Music and Dramatic Arts. So they're committed thespians, they're theater majors, and I would say they're assisting me, but I think it looks like I'm assisting them.
So how are you going to present this? Is this going to be, are they going to be performing your dialogues and you
That's
doing the
right.
monologues?
No, I think we'll put the monologues aside, and they will perform some of the dialogues, but then Mariya and I will do one, and Erin and I will do one. So we'll switch it off like that.
Have you done this before?
We did it this Sunday. And
How'd that go?
a bit of a rehearsal. I think it went pretty well. Yeah.
Do you have a background in theater?
You know, not really. Not maybe in my 20s there was a little bit then, but then I got into teaching, and which is theatrical on some days, but no, not really.
So can you share a little bit of your personal history with us? Because I was reading that you were in the Peace Corps, was it? Or was it?
Yes, I was. I don't know where you came across that.
That's amazing what you can find these days.
In Tanzania?
Yes,
Wow.
in Tanzania.
A medical practitioner is what I read. Is that?
That
Correct.
too. You people are
We
frightening.
do our homework.
Yeah, I was in a teaching in a boys' school, and but I extended for a while and did some work out in the bush. We were still giving smallpox vaccinations in those days. Yeah, that was in the mid to late '60s.
Oh, very interesting
Yeah,
time.
and that is when I had my dramatic, my theatrical experience, because the boys were studying Shakespeare, and to give them a better sense of the play, all the staff performed the play for them. So that was about the beginning and the end of my career. Yeah.
But then you went on to a great career teaching creative writing.
Yes.
Well, I like the way you characterize it. I taught a lot of rhetoric, composition for many years. I came to California in '81 and started, 80 it was, and started teaching at the UC California, UC Riverside in '81. And was with the English department for quite a long time. Later on, as I started writing some stories, I sort of waved over to these people at Creative Writing, Susan Strait and people like that, got acquainted with them. And I was eventually able to tunnel over there, to migrate, to join them in maybe the last 10 years of my teaching there.
So you have 2 books of short fiction out? Or is there more than that?
Only 2 books of short stories.
Uh-huh.
That's right. I'm hoping that this new project and another very eccentric project that I have completed will find some shelter somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, you've received 2 NEA fellowships over the years, a pushcart special mention, so you must be doing something right.
I was very fortunate, and in terms of that support, I should be more prolific. So I owe
2
them
books?
something.
Oh, well, that's quite an accomplishment right there. So.
Thank you.
I understand. Well, you brought the books with us.
I did.
And would you read some from each of those books?
I will. I was thinking about Inlandia and wondering if I was in any sense a regional writer, because that's part of the focus of the Institute. And I didn't think I really was, but I started looking through the contents, the stories, and realized that, well, here it is. Here it is. There's a painter a Native American painter from Coachella. There's a Vietnam vet who hangs out at the Redlands, Lincoln Shrine in Redlands. There's a story in Encinitas, one in Carlsbad. There's some here and there. So I think I am. I think it's inevitable that happens if you're around long enough. So I thought I would read the beginning of a piece that does invoke the region, and then maybe say something critical about it.
Okay.
I'll just read a couple paragraphs.
Okay.
And the title is the Sleep Machine. It has to do with insomnia. And I think now this must refer to the summer of 2004 because it mentions national political conventions and the Olympics. So I tried to work backwards, and I think that's what it is. So, the Sleep Machine. It was the summer following the summer of the overwhelming fires, a summer when the fires merely whelmed as usual. Southern California's smog smudged with extra particulate as the ash rode the thermals, July giving way to August, Le Tour de France moving aside for Le Tour de Democrats, then Olympians, finally Republicans. June, as hoped, had been cool. Marine air advancing on our inland valley every evening and malingering until midday. We credited that cooling with a spike of heat in May for the well-spaced ripening of our stone fruit. I credited myself for positioning and repositioning an inflatable owl tied to a tall pole and deputized to put the muzzle on birds pillaging our apricots, then the plums and peaches, the sequence of ripening, and the progress of piracy. Carrying the pole-perched owl from tree to tree, I felt part of a parade, as if behind me should come traipsing the guild of librarians or a band of Athenian sages. As a deterrent, the owl was assisted, sadly, by West Nile virus. My daughter Natalie and I discovering a crow and a jay under the chinaberry tree, their bodies already under siege by ants, yet somehow overlooked by the family dogs. I'll get some plastic bags, Daddy, and you do the disposal part. Natalie was back from college for the summer, having attended apparently to management techniques, specifically the delegation of tasks. I donned garden gloves, picked up the birds, and dropped them both in one bag, where, side by side, they finally laid to rest their anxious pecking order. I'm an academic on the literary side, so I tend to invest such moments with metaphorical baggage. But in the period I'm speaking of, I was hoping to go on the wagon, to steer clear of figurations, the enterprise seeming a little too argued. That and a desire to simply let summer be summer. By late July, the heat had settled in like a squatter. It would resist eviction until late October. All right, metaphors die hard. So Deborah, Natalie, and I had taken to walking the dogs in the cool of evening. Natalie guiding the old beagle, the collie with me, Deborah just behind us with a flashlight illuminating the road ahead and projecting our elongated forms, human and bestial. Daddy, our shadows. We look like Avengers. Yes, why is that? I think it's a movie shot. I think a classic movie shot. I can almost hear the music. We began stomping and swaggering then, our shadows growing all the more vengeful. But I was happy having nothing to avenge. Leave that for the movies. And don't even think about the home videos in Plato's cave, I told myself. Still, the attempt to engage summer as a simple sensualist, I was struggling to get by without a watch, was itself probably too argued. Well, I must say I love writing those kinds of sentences, but I think it's risky. It's so languorous. It's so slow. It sings up the landscape and talks about the weather. And for readers these days, there's so many competing, compelling forms of entertainment that I don't know if they're going to stay with this, you see. So in the 19th century, I think you had to do that because people didn't know what it looked like in your part of the country, but now everyone seems to. So last night, I was talking to my wife over dinner and mentioning I was coming to see you, and she said she had come across what she thought would be the opening, a good opening of a story. She'd been reading the Dear Abby, or Dear, maybe Abby's gone, but Dear whoever it is in the paper, and she quoted me the first two lines, which were, I don't understand why my mother has never liked me. She even helped my ex-husband kidnap our child. I thought, wow, I'll read that story. I'll stick with that, you know. Well, and I want to write it, so nobody steal this. But I think in short fiction these days, it's very important, you know, to get things rolling quickly. And this strikes me now as a little indulgent.
Well, I thought it was wondrous because I was just tripping over image after image, and it was very evocative, not only of, you know, this area, but also of a certain state of mind, a certain sense of being that you know,
Yeah.
that you know, given the days of the cell phones and everything else that we deal with today, you know, those moments are more and more precious because they're
yeah.
fewer.
Yeah.
So, but I'd like to thank you, and this has been our edition of Inlandia Literary Journeys. Be sure to go see Dwight Yates this week. This Saturday?
Thursday, 7 p.m. at the
Thursday,
Riverside Downtown Public Library,
Very good.
upstairs auditorium.
Okay, so now you know where to go to
Yes.
to see this what is, I'm sure, to be a very interesting performance. For be sure to check out the column that runs every Tuesday in the Press Enterprise, the Inlandia blog, which is in the available through pe.com, where there is fresh material every other day, if not daily. And then always look for our videos, which run at least twice a week. I'm Orlando Ramirez, and for John Bender and Katie Porter, thank you.
Thank you.